I am so excited to share this episode with you, an incredible conversation that I had with Sheila. Now, for folks to be aware, it does include discussion of degenerative diseases and death and grief and all of the messy parts of mourning. And I think that's what makes this such an amazing story. So I'm looking forward to you enjoying it just as much as I did.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Richardson, and I am a lover of learning. I am a cultivator of community, and I am a seeker of belonging. I am a messy and imperfect human, just trying to do my best to make this world a little bit of a better place. So I look forward to you joining me in that pursuit on the Nexus of Narratives.
We're good to go.
Okay, good to go. Well, hello, Sheila.
Hi, Gabby.
Thank you so much for being here.
I'm excited.
It's already been so fun. And I'm so grateful to share space with you. And this is going to be a phenomenal conversation. So I know you through the local chamber, and we met at the Women in Business Conference.
Yep.
And just, I feel like I immediately had a connection with you, and you've been so generous with me ever since, and inviting me to different events and just being so open and kind. And especially with, like, there could be overlap in the work that we do, but instead of being like, oh, this is so cool, how can we support each other, is just such a beautiful way that you've shown up. And I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that. That means so much to me. And, you know, as a community, we're a small community, right? And it's so important for us to support one another. We can't be everything to everybody. And I think we have to look at what is each person's special niche and where do they support and work with people the best. And, you know, that we should support one another in that place.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so that's how I know you, just this wonderful, welcoming, generous person. And so if you bumped into somebody in the road and you were just like, hi, I'm Sheila, this is who I am. Like, what would you say just ever so quickly?
Oh my gosh. Hi, I'm Sheila Clemenson. Gosh, I've been on a journey through my whole life, right? We all have. And I would say that, you know, who I am is so much more than what I do, right? So it reminds me of when I lived on Kauai and you ask somebody, you know, what do you do? Who are you? And, you know, you talk about, well, I love to stand up paddleboard. I love to kayak. I love to hike. I love the outdoors and nature. I love glamping in our van. You know, I'm somebody who loves being out there in the community as well. I'm an ambassador with the chamber. I get involved. I love supporting my people and my community. And that's kind of who I am. I love traveling. I lived in Kauai. I lived in Santa Fe. I lived in northern Michigan. I've traveled throughout the world, right? So, like, you know, this is kind of who I am and what I love to do. And I'm a wife, and I'm a stepmom, and I'm a mom to dogs and a bird. And I, you know, what I do professionally is I'm an entrepreneur, and I own my own business, and I'm a certified career coach, and I'm an HR consultant, and I'm a grief wellness professional. I am a published author, speaker. You know, I love what I do and supporting my clients as a coach. And so those are all the different hats that I wear, and they show up in different kinds of ways at different times, right? I'm an exceptionally great friend, and I love people. And so I'm a people person above all, and just love having conversations like this.
Yeah, well, thank you. I absolutely love that you said I'm an exceptionally great friend. Like, I love that so much, especially because, well, one, it's so hard for us to learn to toot our own horns at any point, and especially in a way that's like, you know what, no, I know I'm good at supporting people. I know I'm a good friend.
Yes.
And that's important to me.
Yeah.
And I love that you call that out. That is so incredible.
Yeah. Well, I want to say building support systems throughout my life has helped me get through some of the toughest times in my life. And without our support systems, I don't know where most of us would be. So, not only being a great friend, but, other people modeling being great friends also is kind of what has got me to where I am now. And so, yeah.
Well, then let's dig into that a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what's the story that you came in to share and that you want to open up for folks?
Yeah. Oh, the story that I came in to share is in terms of, I jokingly but seriously call myself a professional griever. So that's really who I am. I'm a professional griever. And what is that? I have experienced a significant amount of grief in my life as an individual. And I think bringing that into our conversation was important to me today. I don't think that it's given enough attention and enough time, enough conversation. People are afraid to talk about it. Yet we all experience it. I say that we're all past, present, future grievers, whether you are in this moment or not. And so the story that I like to share is growing up in my life. My father committed suicide when I was young. I was 5 years old. And that I didn't know that at the time, right? I was told that he was in a car accident because that's probably what you tell a 5-year-old who isn't going to understand what suicide is, right? But that was a shadow in my life of growing up with a single mom and growing through life as without a father, right? Well, I moved forward through my life and, had a lot of really amazing people and a lot of great support systems. And I also met an amazing man who came into my life, swept me off my feet. And he was in European sales. I got to travel around Europe. I got to live in Pontoise, France for a while. And I was living a dreamy life at 24 years old. And I was working my first job. I worked for Mazda Research and Development. And I was in HR, and it was my first HR job out of college, and I was so excited. I wasn't planning on leaving that, and so he moved to France. I was in Michigan, and we did a long-distance relationship for about 1.5 years. I then moved out with him, and we just had this really magical time, right? Well, I ended up leaving my job, and I left, and I went out to France to be with him. And without a marriage proposal, nothing like that. It was just, okay, I'm going to just go and run and live life large, with a lot of big love. And we moved back to Michigan. We moved to Petoskey, Charlevoix, which is a beautiful area of northern Michigan, off Lake Michigan. It's 4,000 to 10,000 people during the winters. Summers, it's up to 30,000. But I paint that picture for you because we were starting to build our life in a really beautiful place. And while we were doing that, we got engaged, we bought a house, we were planning a wedding, and he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. I was 26 and he was 32. The rug was torn out from under us. And it's a working diagnosis at first because they see how your symptoms progress over time, which he was starting to have a hard time maneuvering his feet. He wasn't walking as well, and then he couldn't use his hands. And so it started in the appendages, the feet, and then the arms. And then from there, it goes internal. And when it goes internally, which you don't know how long that's going to take, it eventually doesn't give you the ability to swallow properly, to, chew your food properly, or to breathe. And so it's a tragic and it's a painful death. Some people, they live 6 months. Some people live 2 years. Grant ended up living 4.5 years. I married him despite all of that. And I walked that journey with him. And that was for 4.5 years. So I bring that in because life is what happens when you're making other plans. And, we had this beautiful life waiting for us, right? That we were not willing to give up. We were going to live it no matter what diagnosis, right? And so Grant continued to travel around the world. I continued to work in my HR position up in northern Michigan. And, maybe we were in a little bit of denial and, pretending like, we had that life that we had wanted for a while. But eventually I became more and more of his caregiver because he started losing the ability to do things on his own. And it was so hard, right? We lived in a small community and he had built his career professionally for years, going from, a Midwestern account salesperson for Lexolite International to European sales to an international sales manager, managing a group of reps around the world. And he's like, I'm not giving up this career. And I don't want anyone to know I have this. So I swore to him that I wasn't going to tell anybody in our community that he was ill. And so he didn't want people to treat him differently. He didn't want people to treat us differently. I was able to confide in some close friends, family, but really, this was something that we hid. And it was a terribly dark secret to hide, right? That was so painful. So, anticipatory grief is something that we don't talk about a lot. I was showing up in my job every day. I was actually doing 2 positions at that time, and I had 2 separate bosses, and I'm showing up at a manufacturing plant that had 200 to 300 people and doing some really big projects there. And, showing up with my mask on, like nothing's wrong, when deep inside I'm like just dying.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and so what is that experience like? Like, I'm hearing you share this and you're going into this, I'm going to live this life no matter what. And then it was so painful to wear this mask. Like, what did you feel like were some of those beliefs that you had or values that you had that really were pulling you in that direction?
Well, first of all, I really respected where Grant was. And I respected HIPAA, right? Like, you don't share anything that somebody doesn't want you to share about their medical background, right? And so there was really holding space for that and my value of holding space for that, right? And respecting him in that this was his story to tell. This was his journey. I'm the supportive partner on that journey. That was my belief process, right? And so what did I need to do to support him? I was a people pleaser my whole life, so I probably looked at less of what I needed to do to take care of myself. So that wasn't really about me as much as it was about him. And so that part was hard as well, because then, you can only do that for so long, and then resentments start to show up, right? But what I ended up doing was having some people I could confide in, that I could trust, my manager who I was working with, a couple of my close-knit colleagues. I was able to share some things with them so that they understood the insanity that I was living at my home as a caregiver, because that journey is really hard. And if people haven't been there, you have kids, and kids tend to grow more independent, less dependent. Grant was growing more dependent, less independent. So I was able to share enough to get the support that I needed, while at the same time people didn't know everything. But I had a fantastic team of professionals around me that really held the space for me in that place. And I want to say that made all the difference in the world to how I was able to show up and function.
Yeah, because you talk about wearing this mask going into the workplace.
Yes.
Which we've talked about so many times. We're demanded to show up, to walk through the doors of work, or like I was taught, you go to work, you leave the rest of your life behind you. And that
leave your personal life at home.
Like as if this whole part of our humanity and our existence can just be left at that arbitrary threshold.
Yep.
And so,
as if we can compartmentalize all of that.
Right. And sure, I've learned and practiced through therapy. Okay, so, if I feel like I don't have the capacity to face this one thing at this moment in my brain, I'm putting it in a little box and I'm like, okay, I'll come back to you later. I'll open you back up in a moment when it's more safe. But like, it's not okay to pretend that, all of these tragic things that are going on in my life are not happening because I came into my workplace.
Yeah.
So you say it was different for you because people were able to like hold space for you. So what, especially in a space where you felt like you had to hold up this really robust mask.
Yeah.
What was that kind of difference like for you?
Yeah. So in some ways it was about compartmentalizing. Mm-hmm. I actually think it's a good grief strategy, to be honest with you, to compartmentalize some of your life so that you can show up in the ways that you need to. I don't look at that as much as denial as I look at it as being functional for a certain period of time and then moving into where you can be more authentic within yourself, right? So I saw it more compartmentalizing, and that's what I would start doing, where it became my escape. I could live somewhat of a normal life when I was at work.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it was my break away. And it actually was healing. And that was therapeutic for me. Nobody else knew. Nobody was talking to me about it. Nobody was asking me about it because I was living with it all the time at home. Right. But there were tough times when I would come in and I would be disheveled and, oh my gosh, doing whatever I was doing. And I'm going to be 30 minutes late because we can't do this. And, whatever it is that's going on that day when you're caregiving for somebody. Right. And so I had people who understood that and people who were covering for me who understood that. And I was able to have the support I needed in those moments when I couldn't show up 100%. And so we did that for a while. We did that for a couple of years.
Wow.
And then we decided that we needed to phase out. Grant decided he was going to do an early retirement at, however old we were at that time. And I must have been like 28, 29. He was 6 years older than me. And so for his last 2 years, which we didn't know at the time, we moved to Hawaii. Mother Kauai is what I call her. She's the only female island of the chain. And we made the move from Michigan to Kauai, which was huge. We had been there. Grant had been going since he was 15 with his family. They had a timeshare. And he took me there my first time. He proposed to me our first day there on Secret Beach, and I talk about that in my book, which is a really special story called Our Secret Beach, which tells the journey that we had with this amazing island and this bittersweet opportunity to be in one of the most beautiful places on earth, to heal, maybe emotionally, try to heal physically, try to get, whatever it is that we could get that we needed to help him through his journey. I was still holding on to a lot of possibilities with healing modalities and hands-on healers. And I had so many different people come through my life that I would present to Grant. Oh, I found somebody who can do Reiki with you. Oh, I found a hands-on healer, but we have to move to Manhattan. Or I took him to a miracle crusade, in Washington at one point. I had so many different healing modalities coming through me as like a channel that I would present to him, and he wasn't open to them. And that was challenging for me.
What was that like?
It was hard because there was an openness to, you can beat this, you can get better. We can have this life that we've always wanted together. But spiritually, soulfully, he maybe had to go through whatever he was going through in his journey that was very separate from what I may have wanted for our journey together, right? And so, we went to Kauai. It's a very spiritual, beautiful place. And we were able to carve out a life for ourselves there. The island embraced us. Everything fell into place. And I say that because, now it's incredibly expensive to live there. But when we moved there in 1997, it was 5 years after a Category 5 hurricane, Hurricane Iniki, had hit the island. And the island was still devastated. People had left the island. They were rebuilding. We were able to rent a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home for $500 a month, totally get it set up for Grant with his wheelchair and accommodate it. We were embraced with open arms, and we found our ohana very quickly, which your ohana is the family that you adopt on the island, right? There was an aspect of Grant. He did not want people to see him die. He did not want people to see him disabled. So he left his community in northern Michigan healthy, that people could remember him the way he was. And we started a new life on Kauai. You don't need a lot out there. You need a ratty car. You need a place to live. You need a sarong, a bathing suit, flip-flops. I mean, you can be very happy with very little on the island. And so in that place and that way, the island was like an ideal place for us to be.
And even better, you said you were welcomed with open arms.
Yes. Yeah, so I talk about Mother Kauai. I talk about the spiritual nature of the island. And a lot of Hawaiians will say the island either embraces you and accepts you or it kicks you off. And you know that in a very short time when you're there. And we were embraced. We found a place to live. We found supportive resources. We found, we just felt embraced and accepted, and everything that we needed fell into place. Caregivers that we put ads in the paper for. So everything just, it magically kind of like came together for us. His dad did have a timeshare on the island. He would come out for 3 months at a time. So his dad and stepmom, they would come and they would support us. His brother as well. And so we did have some, and then we were absolutely a fabulous place to come and visit because we had a guest room. So, who's going to miss out on an opportunity to come to Kauai, to stay for a while and to visit. And so we had a lot of that too. So it was a very bittersweet. It was a bittersweet time in our lives. But if you're going to have a terminal illness, it's not a bad place to be.
Yeah. Especially at such a reasonable rate to be there. Certainly.
Yeah.
And so what was that kind of journey like, being in that space? You had chosen to completely uproot your life and change everything. And during a time that was so hard, that I see it as a picture as like, you could have chosen to be like, this is horrible, I'm going to sit in it, I'm going to dwell, I'm going to grieve, all of these different things. Or you chose to completely make a huge change. What was that experience like, to just uproot everything?
I think Grant and I were adventurers. So, we loved to travel. We loved new places. We weren't averse to that. And he wasn't at all in his life. He traveled a lot. And so it was natural for us to pick up and to go someplace new. We had been to the island before we had moved there. We saw how supportive it was, how supportive the culture and the people were for us. So it wasn't as scary as maybe moving to some other places for us. It's still a part of the United States. I mean, there were some benefits that we ended up gaining that we wouldn't have gotten someplace else. I was able to get an $8 an hour job working at a clothing store, and I was able to get full-time benefits for us working part-time. Hawaii Blue Cross and Blue Shield. which is something that we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And by law then, if you worked part-time, you were given full-time benefits in the state of Hawaii. So that was a very unique situation that paid for a lot of bills for us and provided a lot of support. What else happened? I mean, you know, it was just, yes, it's a beautiful place. And that was hard too.
Why is that?
I felt a little trapped in my own body as Grant was trapped in his, because I didn't want to flaunt that I could go and do a lot of things on the island when he wasn't able to do them. And so, you know, when you're working through somebody who's coming to terms with, I have a terminal illness and I'm dying, their priorities take priority in your life. And their needs and their wants sometimes take priority in your life together. And as much as you don't want to admit that you're not your own person, you're a couple and you've decided to walk this journey with someone who is not going to be walking for very much longer. And then this person has become more dependent on me over time, more childlike, more in need of my support, feeding, doing different things. So I chose to walk the journey of being his caregiver. At certain points in time, he said, you know, I think that you bit off more than you could chew. And I said, yes, I did. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. But I'm still here. I'm still here for you. And it's by choice. However, as I became more and more of his caregiver and less of his wife, what really hit me so hard was perhaps we should have had more caregivers so that I could be more of his wife than his caregiver. So that is often what I will share with people and just say, you know, if you're able to be that partner, be that spouse, be that sibling, be that child, instead of taking on the caregiver role, if you can financially find a way to do that, be who you are to that person and know you don't have to be their caregiver if you don't want to take that on. Because that changes the dynamic of your relationship. And so Grant became more like my child. I became more like his mom, taking care of him. But there was that unconditional love and that bond between us, right? But the dynamics then change of your relationship, and that becomes painful.
Don't go anywhere just yet. We're going to continue this conversation in just a moment.
Check it out.
I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend your time with me here on the Nexus of Narratives. I know that time is our most invaluable resource, and I am grateful for your support by just listening. If you would like to further support the podcast and my continued work in this space, please go to www.nexusofnarratives.org. That is NEXUSOFNARRATIVES.org for more content, ways to support, and connect with others. The Nexus of Narratives is a project, a passion project of mine in the Nexus Impact. So if you are looking for coaching services to become the type of leader that others want to follow, or help improve the culture and engagement of your teams, your organizations, and build greater community to help reduce lost costs due to turnover and inefficiency, reach out to me. I would love to help support you in your work. And if that is the avenue that you would like to go, you can find me and connect on my website. That is thenexusimpact.com or THENEXUSIMPACT.com. Thank you.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that pain, if you don't mind. That
sounds like a huge shift from going from this place of this like really beautiful bond and relationship that you develop, this adventurous nature, to then now this entire dynamic has been flipped on its head.
Yeah.
And the marriage is no longer like a marriage. It's you're supporting someone, and you'd said you felt more like a mother to him. So what was that like?
It was so hard. It was really probably one of the hardest things I hope that I ever go through in my life. You know, we had the best life that we could possibly have together in a beautiful place. And to watch somebody die slowly of this kind of an illness is really painful. There are a lot of painful illnesses out there, but watching somebody die this way is hard, right? Yeah. And so, you know, I just basically tried really hard to bring the caregivers in to support and help him. And they were more friend caregivers. They weren't like, you know, professional caregivers, but it was exactly what he needed at the time. You know, people that could take him to the beach, could take us, you know, could sit and hang out with him. They were friends who were caregivers. And that made things very special and harder. But eventually, you know, I had gotten to a point of, you know, training 5 people to take care of him. And he and I, believe it or not, 6 months before he died, we went to Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. I told you, we don't let grass grow under our feet. And I don't care that he only had 6 months to live. He's like, we're going to Brazil. And I'm like, really? How are we going to do this? And he had reps out there that we got on the plane. Another friend came with us. We went from Kauai to California to Miami to Brazil. Wow. And I was losing my mind. He was trying to live this life that he still wanted, and he could hardly hold his head up. I ended up getting the worst of him rather than the best of him in those moments. I was the one dealing with the tired, cranky Grant. Our friends got the happy-go-lucky Grant who wanted to drink a beer through a straw and just be one of the you know, friends that's just having a good time. And I was the one who had to remind him, oh, you know, we've got to make sure that we give you this medication, and we need to make sure that, you know, you don't completely overdo it so that you're totally spent and like we can't do what we want to do tomorrow. Right? Kind of like a parent does with their kid, right? So I probably was a miserable person to be around then, but Grant took a lot out on me. And so the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse that could go back and forth between us because of the power plays and the struggles that are going on when you're trying to support and help somebody, that was eating away at our marriage. And we could love each other for all of our beautiful qualities, but the ugliness was like really what we were left with a lot of the time, right? So really about 6 months before Grant died, he like, I'm going to divorce you. And I'm like, if you have the energy to divorce me, knock yourself out. I mean, I really had to tell him, knock yourself out. I trained 5 caregivers to take care of him. I went back to Michigan for a couple of weeks and he had 5 caregivers taking care of him. When I came back, he cried and we had missed each other, and he ended up having aspiration pneumonia. This was July 1st of 1999. So we're kind of in that time frame right now. And he had to go to the emergency room in the hospital, and he was in ICU for 2 weeks. And that was the beginning of the end. And when we were there, he made me promise him that I would take him to Secret Beach one last time. And Secret Beach, if people know Secret Beach on Kauai, it is an incredibly difficult beach to get to because you have to like climb down, walk down a steep trail, dirt trail that can be wet, slippery, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get down to the beach. And so it is hidden. It's a hidden beach.
Hence the name.
Yeah. And so he made me promise, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I'll get you to Secret Beach one more time, you know? And the story that is in the beginning of the book tells how that happened and how we were able to make that happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm 31 years old. Grant's 36, just shy of 37. I probably look like I'm 50 to 60 at that time or older, you know, just the stress that put on both of us. Mm-hmm. And so it was challenging and it was painful, but it was also like one of my greatest accomplishments that I was able to be there for him, helping him through that. Mm-hmm. I'm proud of that.
That's amazing. So what are some of those kind of like beliefs and values that you have that you're just like, I'm proud of this thing that I did?
Yeah. I believe going through that experience that I was shown the big picture of what's really important in this life. Mm. The people that we love. Love is the only thing that matters. Mm. And I got that big picture.
That's amazing. And so I can only imagine how transformative that experience was for your life. So how have you seen that kind of like carry through the rest of your life? Because you were still so young once that happened that it's like you already lived a life.
Yeah. So I say that that's from a spiritual place, right? Mm-hmm. From a human place, I was stumbling around in the dark, looking for the light switch and my underwear most of the time and not finding either. That's how I describe it. I was drinking a lot. I was dating a bunch of men, whether appropriate or inappropriate, you know. I was struggling. After Grant died to find myself again. I lost myself, my own identity in being a caregiver for him. And so moving through that, I lost myself and I had to find myself and reconnect with myself again.
So what was that like?
It was painful. It was painful because all of my humanness, my codependencies, everything that I had been before I was more empowered meeting him came back like a layered onion, you know? And at one point, Grant was crying in bed, and I said to him, "What are you crying about?" And he's like, "I'm not going to be able to protect you from these jerks that you're going to start dating again after I die. Because that's what you did." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And I was attracted to the emotionally unavailable bad boy kind of person, right? And so that's who I would date and who I was trying to move forward and trying to have partnership or try to not even necessarily get married again, but just enjoy life with in a more committed way. And it was really hard. Yet I was so far from the person that could commit to anything, you know, look in the mirror and reflecting back. I wasn't that available person. And so, yeah, it was really, I say, stumbling around in the dark looking for the light switch for years. And that was my journey. My journey as an alcoholic. I was a party girl. It wasn't about, you know, drinking by myself, but I just wanted to be around people. It was the uncomfortable places that you can go in moving through your grief journey dysfunctionally. You know, numbing yourself with alcohol, food, drugs, relationships, sex, whatever it is, you know, that's the life that I was living for quite a few years after Grant died. And my Ohana was taking care of me. I had amazing people on the island who took care of me, thankfully. And I survived all of that. And then I realized I was a functional alcoholic. I had a management job in a jewelry store. I bought a 5-bedroom house. I rented out to people. And as an entrepreneur, I started a business called Healing Palms of Kauai because caregivers need care too. And I brought caregivers into my home who needed respite. And then I brought grievers into my home who needed respite. And so there was always this, I want to support and help people who need that. And so I opened my home to that. I started the nonprofit that then became a business and then the island got quiet.
What do you mean?
One of the gentlemen I was dating moved back to another country where he was from. My friends started moving and life just moved on. And I had just experienced a deep stillness with the island. And it was time to leave. It was time to go do my work that I was supposed to be doing, my meaningful, purposeful work on the mainland. My mom had bought a Visiting Angels franchise, which is home care for seniors. She needed a right arm. I moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico to help her build a business, which was all of my bullseye areas, my strengths. It was HR. It was training for caregivers. It was PR. I was training caregivers, taking care of clients who had ALS. I mean, I really just jumped in and it was the perfect fit for a short amount of time. And then I started taking coaching training because I was looking at grief programs and grief certifications, and I wanted to create a business that would fill the gap that I needed. So I didn't need a really exceptional therapist. I had one. I needed someone to help me move forward through the grief process into my new life. And so I created that business and I did grief wellness coaching, helping partners rebuild after they lost their spouses and move forward from there. And I was building this business. I did grief retreats on the island of Kauai. So I brought Mother Kauai back in because it's such a nurturing and healing place. And then the economy tanked in 2008. And I got a job back in HR, my foundational career at Boulder Community Health in Boulder. And, I was building and doing my business while I was working part-time, but it was a challenging time. But that passion and that purpose was always there to support people going through this, to help them move forward. And so I really had success doing that. And then my life got pulled back into HR, and I enjoyed so many things in HR. So, what I do now, I'm a career coach, right? I'm a certified career coach. I'm an HR consultant. I help people find their meaningful purpose and move forward. But because of my past experience, that grief piece has come in. And that significant experience of supporting and helping people through the grieving process and helping people move forward through that is kind of where my passion is. So, I did this job for 9 years. And then in 2017, I was in complete job burnout. I ran out of there with my hair on fire, not literally, figuratively, recruiting for 140 positions during a nursing shortage. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I found myself opening my LinkedIn account and saying, I have 20 connections. And, oh my gosh, I have to redefine myself and who am I and what do I do? I'm a career specialist. I help people figure out what they're going to do for their lives because we put so much of our time there. What is it that we're supposed to do and what are we called to do and what is it that's important? So I built my business in January of 2018, Transitions Coaching Services, and it's 6.5 years successful. And I help people figure it out. I help people. I'm stuck. I'm confused. Should I stay? Should I go? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? No matter how old you are. And so I take people on that journey now with the foundation of everything that I've been through. But what I recognized is grief is a powerful, powerful catalyst for changing your life. Because once you have been through the trenches of grief, you can very rarely ever do what you did before.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. It's a powerful catalyst. What do you mean by that? Like
your whole life
experience?
changes. Sometimes the very essence of who you are as a being changes. What was once important to you, what you once valued, is no longer important to you. You start seeing your new life through your new eyes and what's really important to you. Sometimes this is people, places, and things that like worked for you that no longer work for you anymore. Sometimes it's people that you thought that you could rely on and count on who don't show up for you anymore. And you're redefining all of your support systems because the people that you thought that they were are no longer the people that they need to be for you,
So
right?
what was that like for you?
For me, I was able to retain so many of my friends. My friends didn't change. I grew closer to them. My support system stayed the same. But as I'm, in my HR role, and I'm like, why am I doing employee relations right now with these two people who don't get along and they're making their lives miserable, and why am I doing this? And it's absolutely depleting me. Yes, I can choose to help that, or I can help these other people that are so much more connected into my bullseye, right? So I start thinking about, how do I want to spend my valuable time every day? What values do I bring into this? What are my strengths that I'm bringing into this? And how do I really want to live my life every day, and from a place of value? So it's what I do with my clients. I do a strengths, values, deeper dive, and we help them live more fully into their values. Love me some Brene Brown, right? Really, standing in and walking into your values in an authentic way. And people need more and more of this.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, that's the approach that I take to everything that I do, is how are we acting in alignment with our values? And it's interesting to consider grief as a catalyst to that, to really show us what is and isn't important in the world. Because I hadn't even thought about that. And I think about every moment that I've had monumental grief. And it's been exactly that. Is all of a sudden, that doesn't matter. All of a sudden, this is what matters. This is, why am I wasting my time spinning my wheels here? This is where I want to be.
Yes.
It has always been that. So I find that deeply fascinating.
Yes. Well, when we say grief is a catalyst, look at COVID. Look at the pandemic. I built my business through the pandemic. I could not have planned that from a strategic perspective, right? How many clients came to me and they're like, I can't do this job anymore. I'm not going to be married to this person anymore. I can't live here anymore. I need you to help me completely change my life because I can't do this. I won't do this. I will not do this anymore. And it's like, okay, well, thank you for inviting me in. And wow, this is a wild ride. Nobody was doing anything. We were getting all of the government supplements, and everyone's spending money on career coaching because they're like, not doing this anymore. I'm not wasting my life on this anymore because this is not what I'm all about. This might pay the bills, but this isn't what I'm about. And so really the misalignment between paying the bills and doing what you want to do that you're passionate about and you're more purposeful about, and you're really living into the strengths and what lights you up and what gets you excited. That's really where we're going.
And is that where you feel like you're at right now?
Yes.
I was like, I can feel just based on the way
yes.
you're just like.
I had to move around and go, yes. Because I sit and I talk about grief, right? And I talk about all of these things, but that's not who I am. Yes, I can hold space with that all day long as a professional griever, quote unquote. But I choose to live in a far more optimistic place than that, right? And so, so then this book comes in. This book comes in And 2 years ago, in October of 21, after going through the pandemic.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk about it
And
if you'd like.
this book, Over the Rainbow, From the Depths of Grief to Hope, was my baby. My baby that came out of the oven after 2 years. I'm like, why am I not writing the career coaching book? Why am I writing the grief book? And it's because it was a bucket list thing for me that I had to do. I had to share my experience to help people. And so my husband says to me, Sheila, not everybody needs to write a book. You need to write a book. Good luck finding time for that. And the money and everything else. And so I did. And as I'm writing this book, and I'm very spiritual, I'm not as religious, but I'm spiritual, and I'm asking God and the universe, why am I writing this grief book? It's terribly painful. It's vulnerable. You have to be raw and vulnerable to write a grief book. I'm sorry, otherwise nobody else is going to buy it. No one's going to know, well, what is this all about? Every single time I would question why, I would bring in a client who was deeply grieving the loss of a spouse, the loss of a best friend, the loss of a job they loved, the loss of their business through COVID especially. And they're like, I don't need you to be a therapist for me. I've got great therapists. I need you to help me figure this out. I need to know, what am I going to next? What is out there for me and what is next? And so I hold the space through significant life transition and grief experiences, and I help people to build their new direction through meaningful purpose, career, professional work, whether that's their vocation that they earn a paycheck through, or whether it's volunteer work that, they're passionate about, and it's an encore career for somebody where they're like, I don't need to make all this money anymore. I want this awesome fun job, or I want this job over here where I'm going to be of value. I don't care that I'm only making $50,000 a year because I did my career and now I can do this. We have generations now, Gen Zs, millennials, different generations that have very different values about what work-life balance is all about. So I work with career design and work-life balance, helping people figure out what's important to me and what do I want to be spending my time doing every day? And how do I want to balance flexible time with my family, right? So the number one thing, and it's not the Sheila Clemenson study, but, it's my clients telling me this, the number one thing that they want is flexible time off, a flexible schedule to spend more valuable time with my family, with my kids, if I need to take time off work, So I am really in touch with the values that a lot of people are living and a lot of the beliefs that people are embodying. But I want to say, what I tell people is, don't believe everything that you think because it might not be true. And as a coach, we do this,
our
right?
Brains can play some mean tricks on us too. And so absolutely. Well, and I think it's so cool that you're like, okay, through all of these different areas that my life has spread, this awful grieving process, my entire life flipped upside on its head. I had to completely change it, and I went in this whole new area. It just kind of came all around back here, so you could use all of that to try and help others in that space, which I think is so beautiful. And so, I have to ask you the same.
Thank you for saying that, because that's what I try to help my clients do. I say, this is your career timeline, everything that you've done in this life. It's an exercise that I do. And I say, how can we pull this, and this and bring it together and get you where you want to be? Whether it's your own business, whether it's in a position that you can create for yourself or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I think over time, we all have those moments. My background has been eclectic. I had a moment where I dabbled in academia and I studied neuroscience. And then I was like, I'm going to go to grad school. I'm not going to grad school. I'm working in senior living. I'm progressing up this way. I'm working in nonprofits. I'm working in community building. And then coming around in all these spaces and being like, wow, it's very interesting how they all make sense together right now in the way that I'm showing up in the world.
Yes.
And so I think it's so cool you can help other people with that and with your experience.
I call it an organic dance. When I'm talking with my clients and they're like, I need to find a job, or this is the kind of job I want, or whatever, I say, I can prepare you to put yourself out there with your professional brand, refined and polished, and we can put you out there with the best alignment of your bullseye: knowledge, skills, talents, abilities, values, strengths, right? What are you going to find once you put yourself out there? We don't know. We don't know who you're competing against. We don't know what you're up against. So I will often say, what is it that's waiting for you out there? You might think you're going to do this, but the door doesn't open. The doors don't open. But this other industry is calling you in, or this particular kind of work is calling you in. Sometimes that isn't the be all end all what we're supposed to be doing, but maybe it's a stepping stone to that.
Yeah.
So if you look at all of the experiences that you've had in your career, you might start to see how they piece together that puzzle of the picture that you've created now and what you're doing now. Which is touching so many people.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope it does. And I would hope that anyone listening or watching can be like, oh, I'm going to look at my life and look at all these pieces that maybe at some point didn't make sense. And now, oh, they do. And this is how I can show up better in the world.
Yes.
And so I'm going to ask you the same things that I ask everyone who joins us is, how do you feel your story can create connection for others who are listening or watching?
My book is the biggest way that I'm trying to create connection right now. That fellow grievers feel validated, supported, understood, moving forward through the raw vulnerability of grief and rebuilding their lives. That is one of my biggest, meaningful, purposeful things that I'm doing now. I recognize that transitions and changes over time, right? But that's my big thing right now. Helping people show up and be who they came here to be, which is really powerful.
Yeah, like nurturing authenticity is what I hear in that.
I love that. Yes, that's a great way of describing it. I might want to borrow that.
You're welcome to take that. Just make a tally, 5 cents every time you use it. I'm just kidding. And then if someone has been listening and watching and can resonate with your story and can feel into that, what might you say to a past version of yourself?
Wow. Wow. A past version of myself, I would tell her, don't worry about pleasing everybody else so much. Work on taking care of yourself and really connect with your own self-care so that you can show up stronger for other people. I really think that if we think that we don't need to take care of ourselves in the ways, I'm saying physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, all of the ways, if we miss out on those, we're really defeating showing up for people the way we really need to. And that's what I would tell her. Take care of yourself so that you can show up for other people in a bigger way and yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And so I suppose quickly that reminds me, because you'd said, oh, I grew up being a people pleaser.
Yes.
And then now you're saying, put on your oxygen mask first.
Yes.
What changed that?
I'm 56 now. I've kind of lived more life. I've realized that being a people pleaser doesn't always support and help you. It actually can be detrimental to your own personal growth and development. And that we don't have to give up parts of ourselves to be less for ourselves to support other people. That authenticity that you talk about is huge, right? Yes, you freely choose what you want to do and how you want to show up for people. And that obligation that you might feel to really be thoughtful about that, because we're not as obligated as we think that we are. Does that help? You understand that?
Well, and also, now I would have to rewind to get the words exactly correct, but I heard you say something along the lines of, you don't have to diminish yourself to show up for others. You don't have to take away from you
Yes.
to be there for others. And that's something that I feel like I want in like shining, bright, pulsing lights.
Yes.
And I mean, just as a reminder for myself too.
Absolutely.
And I think there's something there that I'm not exactly sure where it comes from, but I can feel that for myself as well. To be like, oh, but I need to do for others. I need to do for others.
Yes.
And then it's like, it was my changing moment was becoming a mother, where I was like, I'm not going to be a good parent, a good person for anybody else if I'm not taking care of myself. The best way for me to show up for others
Yes.
is to make sure that I'm showing up for myself.
Yes.
And I know that was a moment for me. And
Well, I think that sometimes there's a fine line between feeling that you're being selfish and self-centered. I think that that's a hard that's a hard place sometimes for people to live. If you've ever been called that, you're being selfish. You know, it's usually when you're living into what you need to do for you. And, you know, for me, that's just something that I've had to work through. Lessons in my life, right? Fears of abandonment, people leaving. And then you feel like, well, who do I need to be for that person to stay?
I've been that.
And I think a lot of people have been, who do I need to be for this person to stay? Whether it's a parent, whether it's a spouse, you know, we kind of bring forward from where we are, right? From where we've been. And so I think that that's powerful. And, you know, the layered onion of our lives, that every time we peel a layer, that we think that we're growing and moving forward, we're peeling another layer as well. And we feel stronger and we feel more empowered. But wherever you go, there you are. Still, right? I mean, you're only the best person that you are today. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, trying to be our best selves, trying to be our authentic self. Some days we're our best self, and some days we're just our authentic self in our humanness of wherever we are in the moment, right? And then I think that we shouldn't beat ourselves up for being in those places. I felt like I did that a lot as a caregiver, that I couldn't show up at my 100% every day. Sometimes I say, Grant, you got 50% of me today, but I'm here. I'm sorry, but this is the reality. This is what I can show up and be today.
Yeah.
Emotionally, physically, whatever that is, right? But if we're not taking care of ourselves, we have less for ourselves and less for others.
Absolutely. And that was in, I can't remember which book of Brene Brown's that she used the example. I remember listening to the audiobook with my husband on a road trip, a recommendation of our therapist. And I remember her saying, honey, I can only show up as 50% today. Can you be my other 50?
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
But I think that it's about writing your own story. So, you know, yes, so I have my story. Everyone has their story. And it's about knowing that you can write the ending of your own story, just like Brene says as well. You can write that ending. And what I love about my book is it showcases the journey that I've been on from when Grant died to today. And so it is about the journey of finding new love in your life and rebuilding your life and the career transitions you might go through and different things. There are some really cool mystical things in this book too about how we bring our loved ones forward after they have died and helped make us the person that we are. So, you know, my current husband, Sean, I say, Sean, you're my over the rainbow. And he's like, I thought your husband, your former husband, Grant, would have been like your over the rainbow. And I'm like, no, you're my over the rainbow. You helped me through all of this. And if it weren't for both of you, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that way about every single interaction I have every single day.
Right?
Is every conversation, every moment helps me to become who I am.
Yeah.
And who I will be.
Yes.
And so for people who are listening or watching who maybe can't relate, they haven't grieved in the way that you have, I think, there are plenty of people who are future grievers.
Yes.
How can your story create connection for people who might not resonate with what you've shared?
What some people have shared with me is this is a beautiful love story. This is a book about love and resilience and joy. And that we can experience all of that through grief, through a lot of really hard times in our lives. And that emotions are a roller coaster and we can experience all different ranges of emotions at the same time. And that no matter the hardest thing that you might go through, you can come to the other side of it to resilience and to joy and being happy again. That's that rainbow kind of on the book, right? So that is really powerful, for me as a lesson, to share with people. But also the interesting piece about this was that people told me, I haven't had any significant grief in my life, but your book helped me to show up better for people who are grieving and my family and my friends and people who are experiencing this.
So what would be one tip that you would give someone to help show up for others when they're grieving?
Don't feel like you have to fix it.
Yeah, actually probably for anything.
Yeah,
any
don't
issue.
feel like you have to fix it. Don't feel like you have to say the right thing. Sometimes you're better off not saying anything. And sometimes you're better off just walking up to that person and saying, I'm here for you.
It's amazing.
Not everyone are mind readers, right? We have some of those friends who are mind readers that we can maybe put on one hand. They will come in very handy for you at that time. But there will be plenty of people that you just need to ask for something that you might need. And think about what they're good at. Can you pick me up a sandwich because I can't go out today? Can you help me with, if you have kids or like whatever, right? Yeah. So I just say that number one, you don't have to fix it. You can just show up and tell somebody that you're there for them and that you care about them. And time does not necessarily heal all wounds. Just because, if somebody's been grieving the death of somebody for 7 years and they're not over it, quote unquote, that you don't get over it. You move forward through it. And there is no timeline or timetable of when that's going to happen for them.
Like necessary generosity with people for wherever they are.
Very much so. It's holding that space.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's so beautiful. I think that's also the other shining, blinking light. Just allow that space for people and show up for them.
Hold the space for them to be authentic.
Yeah. So amazing.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for this time to share. That my book is available on Amazon, so I'll plug that just because I can.
Yeah, and you did an audiobook too. I'll plug that.
I did.
You.
I am slowly uploading the audiobook, and it's been such a journey. It's been such a journey, but a powerful journey. So, people do reach out to me, like, oh, I want to write a book. I want to write a book. And, there's a lot to that, but it's a powerful experience to share our story with other people. And I highly support everyone who wants to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming here to share your story and get vulnerable and go through that entire adventure with me. I'm so grateful.
You have made it easy to sit here and go through that adventure. And it is a powerfully challenging adventure. And so thank you for holding space and sitting with me to share all of that. It takes a special person to be able to sit with that too.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
a special thank you goes out to Sparta Media Group for producing this podcast ever so fantastically. So thank you to Jesse and his team. And an additional special thank you goes out to my sweet and talented husband, DJ Richardson, for creating the music that is used in this production. Thank you so much, so deeply for spending your time with me here on the Nexus of Narratives. I hope that you found this to be a tremendously valuable use of your time and your capacity, and that this might help you to create greater connection and compassion in the spaces all around you. Thank you. It is never less amusing every single time I've done that so far.
Oh my God.
It is just as fun every time. Where's my director's chair?
I love it. Don't look at whatever he's doing.
Yeah, if he starts doing jumping jacks,
We're
then
like, okay,
maybe we can
whatever.
find something to throw at him. But.
Okay.
Well, I do have one moment in it'll be my second episode that we were chatting with him too, that I have as part of like the end credits. So
Oh my
the
gosh,
three of us
that's
ended
so
up
awesome.
chatting.
That's awesome.
But yeah. All right, are you ready for us?
All right. Now you're hired, Danny.
Okay. I need to chill out.
Do I need to sit down too?
No.
I thought you said I was hired.
Okay.
I was like,
You're hired. You're hired.
Gabby, chill out. Sit back. We adjusted for your slump.
Okay.